Before we start the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. And now, let's go. Story 1. I'm an older woman with a demanding job and a family to take care of. I don't have the time to remember every little thing, and people have described me as scatterbrained. But I can still remember what my brother did the spring I turned 10 down by the Leaping River and how it started everything else. That's not just a name I invented. Every kid in town called it that because if you stood on the biggest rock and bent your back at the right angle, you could leap to the other side and grab the elm tree branch like a jungle chimp. I should make it clear this wasn't the kind of venture you just took up any other Saturday. Most of us kids were petrified by the sharp stones that pointed through the river's surface like teeth and the rushing rapids that didn't care how many years you had left to live. Looking back, it really was a stupid risk for even stupider kids. But in the spring of 1987, that didn't matter to my brother Elijah. The only thing that mattered was that Kevin Fackelman told him that he was too chicken shit to make the jump, which of course was war talk for any 15-year-old with a pulse. He told Kevin to meet him at the river at 10 that night, and then they'd both see who was a chicken shit. Naturally, he tried to keep this a secret from me. I was 11 years old and somehow hadn't grown out of being the family tattletale. I don't think I ever would have found out if I hadn't snooped in on him packing up his backpack. "Why do you need the bug killer?" I asked. Elijah dropped his equipment and rushed to close the door. I was still small and quick at that age, so I was able to rush inside the room before he could reach the handle. My brother spun around as I scrambled behind his bed. "Go away," he hissed, probably wanting to kick himself for leaving his door open. "What are you doing?" I asked, brushing over his words. My brother narrowed his eyes. "Aren't you supposed to be doing homework? I'll get Mom, and you'll have to skip dessert." My face fell at the thought, but as simple as I was, I still knew one good trick. "Nah, because if you get Mom, she'll ask what you're packing up for, and then she'll yell and ground you for a week." I whined with slight pride, typical for a brat. Elijah was quiet for a second, then sighed. "Fine," he grunted, picking at the acne that plastered his left cheek. Once he could tell I was all ears, he told me everything about how that jerk from my gym class had given him a dare and how he was going to show him wrong once Mom and Dad had gone to bed. "Let me come with you. I want to see." My brother turned away. He zipped up his backpack, slung one of the straps over his right shoulder, and turned his head back to me. I could see a firm no in his eyes as he made his way to the door. Just before he turned the knob, his shoulders slumped. "You're going to tell Mom and Dad, aren't you?" I didn't say anything. I could guess where things were going and was glad. "You can come. Get packed up and meet me outside in 3 hours. Bring your flashlight. Mine's already a little flickery." I smiled. You have to understand, I was at the age where an adventure with teenagers was about the coolest, most mature thing I could experience. Imagining how angry my parents would be only made it more exciting. Still, one question remained. What if I fell asleep before the meeting time? After all, my dad was the only one in the house with an alarm clock. What if I'm late? Elijah didn't say anything, but I could sense his implication that there was no way that would happen. And to his credit, he wasn't wrong. We left the house sometime at 11 p.m., and that was that. It hadn't been terribly easy for me with my clumsiness and fear of any resulting noises, but Elijah held my arm down the stairs and whispered promises that this door doesn't creak, remember? I remember standing outside the front door with the whole night sky in front of me and nothing but the sound of crickets, and suddenly becoming aware of how small I was. If I'd been smarter, I would have seen how stupid I was being and gone back inside. But I was 11 years old, and the chance to see something so exciting up close seemed impossible to pass up. My brother was soon several feet ahead of me, and I stopped looking around into the night so I could run to his side. Judging by what I heard from older kids around the neighborhood, terrible things could happen in the night. I thought of such things and hugged my brother's arm. He barely seemed to notice. A few minutes later, I asked him if this Calvin guy will let me watch you jump. Will he send me back? Almost reluctantly, Elijah turned his head to me. "His name is Kevin, and he won't. Dudes like him always want more attention. He'll think it'll be funnier if you see me chicken out," he said plainly. I smiled hopefully. "You won't though, right? You'll prove him wrong." I grinned at the thought of a bully in our already rowdy area learning some shame. My brother's eyes turned back to the road, and he said nothing. The crickets sounded quieter after that, and the moon seemed to stare. Just when I thought we might be getting lost, we saw the house my brother said belonged to this Kevin kid. He walked up to the driveway and made me stand at the border while he went further. I stared at a white chalk drawing on the gravel. Elijah raised the flashlight to one of the windows, and a circular ray shone on the blinds. A few seconds passed, and I heard my brother utter a word I knew Mom would scold him for. Was the light not coming through? Would I miss out? Please God, don't let it be, I thought. Like an answer to my little prayer, the front door slowly opened, and out stepped a figure around the same size as my brother. Kevin. Elijah swerved his flashlight in his direction, and even from a distance I could see a smile below the hand shielding his eyes. I doubt my brother returned it. Kevin went up to Elijah and gave him a good punch on the shoulder. I thought my brother would push him away, but he just stumbled back a little. Both boys ran up to the driveway border, and I could see that Kevin was more prepared than either of us. His backpack was practically swollen, and he had a look of eased confidence that seemed unnatural for someone in his position. Didn't he know the night's importance? "Who's the kid?" he asked, side-eyeing me like I was a fly on his arm. "She's my sister, Chrissy," my brother answered, and to subtract some embarrassment, added, "It was the only way she wouldn't tell my mom. She wants to watch." Kevin grinned, and I knew my brother had been right about him liking an audience. "Cool, we've got a whole gang. Let's get going," he said. I was more than ready to take off, but first, he turned to me. "Hey, don't start crying if your brother backs out, all right? One of my dad's friends had a farm near the river, and if he hears us, I'm dead," ordered slowly, as if he didn't expect me to understand otherwise. He turned his back, and just like that, he and my brother were on their way. I walked behind them, glaring in Kevin's direction, and for the rest of our journey, I stayed completely silent, just watching the other two. Older kids were still something of a mystery to me, and I was both intrigued and somewhat uneased by how my brother changed when around Kevin. He had never been like the brothers I saw on TV, how everyone tells you a brother is supposed to act, but there was always something I could rely on with him. He would never get too mean, would never do anything beyond a petty insult or pinch on the arm. He didn't have the same emotional restraint at the moment. It seemed every time Kevin opened his mouth, Elijah wanted nothing more than to spit out every curse in the book. I couldn't exactly blame him. Kevin seemed pretty intent on telling him details my brother couldn't care less about. Who French to behind the gym, how silly he thought my brother's greatest American hero shirt looked, seemingly unaware of my brother's grimace. Or maybe he did see it. Maybe that was part of the fun. After what must have been an hour, we found ourselves at Leaping River. The last 10 or so minutes of our journey were through a sprawling field with no houses in sight, and I felt we were rookie explorers of new terrain. I'd been here before. Childish boredom breeds exploration, but the night made everything otherworldly and lush and unsure. When the river had come into view, this became all the more clear. The river, which I had seen before out of sheer curiosity, seemed like an animal now. Not just any animal either, but one of those dark pythons that you would thank God for never seeing outside a National Geographic issue. Actually, this was worse. Pythons are relatively slow creatures, and those nasty little teeth reside in the mouth. The river was fast as hell, and as I listened to that water rush, I felt like I could touch the sharp rocks I knew were lurking everywhere. As we walked over leaves and discarded junk from those before us, I could feel my excitement starting to heighten. It had been present before, but now it was almost painful. We were so close. Any minute now, the jump would be made, Kevin would hang his head in shame, and I would practically be a big kid just for being there. And then we found it. The three of us stood next to that big rock we knew Elijah would be jumping from, and I couldn't help but feel at its cold surface. I wanted something to ground me. Otherwise, I thought I might just jump out of my skin. Second thoughts. I heard Kevin ask, rudely snapping me back into focus. My brother chuckled, and it sounded more like a growl, if you could believe it. Even in the dark, his eyes shone with something I didn't like. He seemed even more youthful in his disdain. My brother crawled up on the rock, and once he stood on top, I forgot about everything else. He took deep breaths, shook his arms slightly. Even though I knew the river wasn't coming any closer, that water sounded louder and louder in my head with every passing second, and with every little thing my brother was whispering under his breath. I thought of Sunday school, of the little paper doves we made after prayers for the needy. In that moment, I wished with my whole heart for all my doves to be returned, so I could erase for the starving and write in for my brother. I knew it was a selfish thought, a sin, but I didn't care. Please God, don't hurt him, I whispered, clutching the pointiest part of that cold stone like a lifeline. He jumped. For a second, it seemed like something kept him in midair between the rock and that beckoning tree branch. Of course, that couldn't have been the case, but it was my perception. I must have been taking some sort of mental snapshot, for how else could I still so vividly remember the water under his feet and how his hands stretched out like a cat's? Again, the moon seemed to stare. And then he made it. Against the worst images I had in my mind, he made it. He grabbed onto that branch and just hung on. The only sound louder than the river was his breathing. Now, the flashlight had been set down, and I don't know if I could fully trust my eyes alone in that darkness, but I believe my brother was crying. It wasn't the running for the hills, sobbing you saw on crappy soap operas or whatever else my mother would curl up to at night, but I swear the tears were there. I think they shone a little in the moonlight. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Kevin smiling. "Damn, pretty good for a chicken shit," he said with a laugh. I felt some awkwardness from hearing a word like that. Said like it was nothing, but I reminded myself that I was an honorary big kid now. As Elijah made his way to the ground, the way the tree was structured, making it fairly easy, I told myself that I could handle anything. I looked at Kevin and felt a smirk forming. My smugness didn't last too long. Kevin made his way onto the rock. His sneaker nearly pushed my hand away, and stood like he had something to be proud of. "Now it's my turn, all right?" He called out to Elijah on the other side, seeming to have forgotten about that nearby uncle of his. It dawned on me that Kevin wasn't the type to feel too bad about losing a bet, particularly with someone he didn't respect. The fact that he'd been proven wrong didn't even seem to faze him. As he got ready to jump, I couldn't help but feel let down. There was less apprehension at Kevin's attempt, seeing as how I'd already watched my scrawnier brother make the leap. He and I both watched the other boy jump, and I could faintly hear my brother click his tongue in annoyance. I could already guess the remarks he was sure to make on the trip back home. Kevin grabbed onto the branch, and unlike Elijah, there was no shaky breathing or possible tears. He just hung there, smiling like an idiot. He didn't even sound scared. "Hey, Eli, isn't that Harsey?" he said, swinging his legs around just to show off. "Got yourself all worked up over nothing, didn't you?" he added. He chuckled to himself, and I realized that this was nothing to him. Jumping the river may have been a challenge to kids my age or someone skin and bones as my brother, but someone as currently comfortable as Kevin must have had enough school sports and roughhousing to make something like this a leisure. This was all about him. I only served as an audience member, and my brother's only purpose was to be a comparison, to be worse. As Kevin's laughter rang on, I began to fret. Kevin might have made up his uncle just to scare me into being quiet, but still, an angry adult is an angry adult. I picked up the put-aside flashlight and shone it toward Elijah. He gave an irritated squint and then stared back at Kevin. That look in his eyes, it put a horrible feeling in me to see someone so filled with loathing. With every laugh from Kevin, it was like something was growing inside him. As he looked up at the boy on the branch, that youthful hatred returned to the surface. An idea had formed. With some primal noise I've never heard since, my brother pushed Kevin into the rushing, teeth-stone-filled water. If my terror hadn't seized me the way it did, I may have taken notice of how easily he went down. Again, Elijah wasn't strong by any means, but Kevin must have been so lost in his own glory that his body was caught off guard. With no more than a push and a jab to his arm, he fell into that river and got his jaw struck by the nearest rock. Any fears of nearby adults instantly vanished, and I yelled bloody murder. I screamed and screamed and screamed until my throat stung, and it was still dwarfed by the noises Kevin was making. He was gasping, crying, and screeching all at once, his voice carrying a feeling he shouldn't have known at that age. As I stood there like a cornered animal, I once again remembered Sunday school. We weren't taught much about hell, but our teacher had reluctantly told us, very briefly, about those screaming people and their torment. As Kevin's cries surrounded me, I could think of no other comparison. I looked at my brother and saw him standing just close enough to where he could pull Kevin back up. As tears clouded my view, I hollered out to him, "Elijah!" I wailed. No response. He just stood there, looking down at Kevin, gripping the same rock that had struck him the way a blade would. He was swearing more than ever through his crying, using words I didn't even know. I heard him call out for his mother. That's something my mind will never blur. I yelled again, "What are you doing? Pull him out. Are you stupid?" I cried, even though I knew idiocy wasn't the culprit here. How could he have pushed him? How could he just be there and not cry as I did? I saw something in my brother that my young mind couldn't read. In retrospect, it couldn't have been anything else but silent victory. People, especially kids, usually aren't terribly clever in moments of panic. Perhaps this is why I grabbed the flashlight, crouched down to where the grass met the water, and reached out my free hand. The water coursed under my arm, the sound combining with everything else and pushing me to cry even more. "Kevin!" I shouted. He looked at me, and I gasped to see the blood dripping from his chin. It just kept coming like foam from the mouth of a rabid dog. Up close, I could see his eyes were manic and had a puffiness around them. I knew he was the same Kevin from before, but he looked more like some wounded animal. "Kevin, please hold on. I want to pull you." I couldn't finish my sentence. Someone was looking at me. I slowly gazed upwards, and just as I figured, my brother had turned his stare to me. For a second, I thought the very worst, but I soon realized he wasn't gazing at me with any contempt. He looked at me, as I was with my quivering hand and screwed face, and then at that merciless river. But he wasn't planning any harm to me. He seemed uneasy. He could always see, especially now, how small I was. Too small and weak to not fall in. "Chrissy, step back, all right? I'll pull him back up," he said. He had a shout to be heard over Kevin's crying, and he still sounded too calm. I shook my head, and his eyes narrowed. "Chrissy, step back. Now." He sounded so firm, and on a night like this, I wasn't keen on taking chances. I slowly withdrew my hand and ambled back several steps. I stared at my brother and Kevin, thinking of one last prayer for the night. "Please, God, make him keep his promise," I whispered. I saw Elijah crouch down to where Kevin could hear him better. I heard the faintest of words, but couldn't make any of them out. After a while, Kevin quit screaming, and his cries turned softer. I saw him nodding. Then, after there was nothing but pained whimpers, my brother took hold of Kevin's arms and hauled him out. It looked awfully hard, but still, my brother was true to his word. Once Kevin was on dry land, I expected him to sock my brother in the jaw. It would have been the least he deserved. But instead, he just stood there, just held himself and wept. He didn't look at either of us. Then he ran, just took off like a rabbit into the score of trees, not looking back even once. The sound of his footsteps faded, and it was just me and Elijah under that staring moon. I fell backward and curled into myself. I shut my eyelids so tight it hurt and hoped that everything would be gone when I opened them. I wanted everything to be gone. The river, the grass under my skin, and especially Elijah. As I hugged my knees, I imagined how lovely it would be to open my eyes and be back home. Yes, I would be in my room with a pillow under my head instead of a dirt patch. My stack of Ramona and Little House books would be waiting for me. The Growing Pains poster near my mirror would show those made-for-TV smiles, and my brother would somehow be worlds away. I got lost in my vision of home, trying to make the walls and furniture seem real enough to touch. It became so hypnotizing that I didn't take heed of Elijah's jump and footsteps until his hand was on me. I recoiled, unable to look at him or even speak. I felt him rub my shoulder. As you can probably imagine, such gentleness was baffling. "Chrissy, just breathe, all right?" His voice was so low. Was he really trying to comfort me now? I tried to shake his hand off, still not daring to meet his eyes. I was too weak, as per usual. He kept breathing at a methodical pace, as if there was an invisible counter over our heads. I followed his example. He still terrified me, but I would have grasped on anything at that moment. In out, in out, in out, asterisk in out, in out, in out. Asterisk as I lay there exhaling with his arms sloped over me. My brother began to repeat himself. "Everything's okay," he muttered over and over. His voice took on a rhythm of its own to match my breathing. He hugged me, and I finally gave in. "I won't tell anyone," I whispered, my voice like a long shudder. I had made this kind of promise many times before, but this time I truly meant it. It was less a fear of consequence and more of a deep guilt. Maybe my first. Somehow, just being here felt like I had carried out everlasting sin. My brother helped me to my feet, and I could see he wasn't looking at me either. His eyes seemed glued to the grass and dirt under his feet. He picked up the flashlight, and we started to walk away from that river. Little by little, the sound of that rushing water grew faint, until it was completely muted. I found myself pushing my brother's arm forward a little. Going home, wanting home, needing home. "Chrissy." I looked at him, his eyes still downwards. There was a meekness to his voice, a shame that ran deeper than mine. "You know that book you wanted for Christmas?" "Ozma of Oz?" he asked. My eyes began to sting again. Was he making fun of me? He must be, I thought. He'd always given me a bad time at home for my doll obsession, and he just couldn't resist it here either. I wanted to turn around and punch him right where that rock had hit Kevin. I just might have tried, if it weren't for what Elijah said next. "I got some cash last week for mowing the lawn. I think it should be enough to buy you one of those." He looked at me, and he gave me a look I couldn't recall seeing in him before. "You like that, right?" He said it like a question, but I could tell it was really a command. And yet, he sounded softer than usual, even softer than when he was getting me to stop crying. Like all the air had been taken out his lungs, and he was only now getting bits of it back. And yet, he still wanted me to know he would buy me that doll. "Yeah, I'd like that." I mumbled, a mix between sore and thankful as I thought about my brother giving me that Barbie. I already had one at home, but I had lost her only dress months ago, and the dog had left a score of bite marks on her legs. A quick curl Barbie would be shiny and new, and I would keep her that way. Once more, I looked up at Elijah. He wasn't facing downwards anymore, and he seemed to be walking with more purpose now. I took particular note of his eyes. I could tell something was turning over behind them. Something was leaving. I'll write more some other time, when I feel ready to. Thanks for reading. Story 2. This may be the tale of a fisherman, but it is no fisherman's tale. I swear it. Father was a white man from Whitby, mother an Iqaluit Inuit, making me half and half. He was Henry Seaver. She was Akakuktuk. Father promised mother their second child would bear an Inuktitut name, but she passed on in the womb, making me Henry Seaver too, sole descendant of Henry Seaver, and the only one left to pass on her story. Father was a fisherman, but don't be mistaken. Even back then we'd long since laid down our spears for rods, our harpoons for rifles, and our weirs for nets. For Father, fishing was little more than puttering about Adek a trawler and his bone-dry waders. Yet the sea and that which lurked within ensnared his heart as nothing else. In my very soul, I know that I last saw my father aboard the vessel, hunched over the railing in his woolen cap, gaze lost on the horizon. As I waved, Father didn't even look back. His eyes only lingered on the sea. The motor roared to life, and with a thunderous crack of ice, Father vanished into the mist. There were no storms. The sea was calm, yet not a man aboard that vessel would return, except, that is, for Father. Father came to our home years later, when Father had become naught more than a bittersweet memory. Mother threw her arms around him, but Father did not, for Father knew not who she was. Father placed one arm at her back, and over her shoulder his sullen eyes bore into mine as he claimed he was suffering from a most horrible bout of amnesia, and, try as he might, he couldn't remember a thing save for his name, stitched upon his slicker, though the portmaster had been so kind as to remind him of his home address. Concerned as she was, Mother was happy to welcome Father in and provide him a hot meal so as to fix his sallow complexion. Mother pranced to the kitchen as Father and I took our seats at the table. I did not say a word, nor did Father utter a word to me. I didn't speak, for I was so petrified I could not. Father didn't speak, perhaps, because he simply would not. Silence fell over the room, and, I swear this, I began to hear a sound I first believed to be the din howl of the moaning winds. But no, I swear I had heard the crashing of waves in that very room, and Father, as though transfixed, allowed his head to loll side to side as if tossed about amidst the foam. Mother prepared father's favorite, dishes of cod, sculpin, and elk. Of the fish, father ate with a never-before-seen ferocity, as though he feared were he to stop eating for even a moment his meal may vanish into thin air. I was horrified by the vile manner in which father shoveled the meat and stew into his craw, adorned with a glistening coat of slobber and saliva, but mother was overjoyed to see father eat so readily, and when he had finished his fish, she politely slid a wooden bowl of roast elk before him with a smile. But father didn't dare touch it. His prior vigor seemed to drain from his body as he gazed down at the meat before him, and after a moment's quiet began to convulse with such force I had worried he may regurgitate all his insides. Mother and I watched in horror as father swept his arm across the table, sending the dishes clattering to the floor, his one sullen eyes now bulging and bursting at the seams, slipping and popping from his sockets. Mother shrieked as father clamped his hand over his mouth and tried again and again to squeeze his eyeballs back into place as a pale gray fluid began draining from his ears as though he were leaking seawater, and his neck began to flex and slither and pulse as though a great eel slithered about within him. Mother grabbed me by the wrist and pulled me from the house, not stopping until we'd reached the hut of an Angakwit. A matter of great urgency, the Angakwit ran alongside us as mother dragged me, now kicking and screaming, back to the house, back to father. But father was no longer home, leaving behind only a shallow pool of foamy liquid where he once sat and a line of frantic footsteps heading towards the harbor. Some may call it folly, but we followed, and by the sea we found father kneeling in the snow. Father glared back at us, and before him I could see, as though a scene from a most horrid nightmare, that cast along the shore, in the frigid water, bumping against the ice, were hundreds, thousands of father's lifeless bodies as though they'd been spat up from the freezing depths and drifted ashore, all of them with their faces to the sky, mouth agape, as though in the most horrible agony imaginable. Silence followed. Father chokingly rasped out to my mother in Inuktitut, but I understood not but the words, "I'm sorry," as mother always made me recite them when I'd misbehaved. Mother gasped. Father then faced the Angakwit and once more spoke Inuktitut, who nodded solemnly, said something back, and waved him away, saying, go now, return." Father rose to his feet, turned towards the sea, and waded into the icy waters until even his head had sunk into the darkness, and with him the shoal of terrified figures receded forever into the depths. Never again did I see father, nor shall I ever see my father again. It has been years now since mother passed, and yet I remain in our house, her very Inuksut in plain view of my window. Never shall I leave either. If I stray, I begin hearing the nauseating crashing of waves, father's waves, growing and swelling ever more until I return to her, the sea, too frightened now to embrace her, too frightened now to abandon her. Thus between here I remain, and as the last of my line, I must here tell you my story. Story 3. I know that sounds strange, and yeah, if I heard someone else say it, I'd probably tell them to see a psychiatrist. But it's true. I would never wear a striped sweater, and definitely not on a random day in July. I don't even own striped sweaters. Yet there I was, in a photo inside a photo album my best friend's mom was showing me, grinning in a red and blue striped knit like it belonged on me. And that wasn't the only strange thing. Earlier this week, I came home from a month-long work trip. I was exhausted, dragging my suitcase through the door when my girlfriend greeted me. "Hey, baby, I made your favorite meal. Eat it before it gets cold. I'm gonna go run a bath for us," Amy called over her shoulder. Chicken parmesan. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was tired, hungry, and honestly touched by the gesture. I sat down and inhaled the food without hesitation. It was good, really good. Too good. Halfway through rinsing my plate, it hit me. I don't even like chicken. I never have. I haven't eaten it since I was a kid. The texture makes my skin crawl. So why the hell did I eat an entire plate of it without even noticing? I shook it off. Jet lag, maybe. Or maybe I was just being dramatic. I got in the shower with Amy, didn't say anything, and went to bed. The next morning, I was getting ready for work when Amy tossed me my keys and kissed me goodbye. I caught them midair and headed downstairs. Halfway, I felt them in my hand. Something was off. The grooves, the weight. They weren't mine. I looked down. Honda keys. I rushed back up the stairs. Whose keys are these? I asked, trying not to sound as shaken as I felt. Amy looked up from her coffee, brow furrowing. What? These keys, Amy. They're not mine. I drive a Toyota. So whose are these? Don't play dumb. She blinked. Honey, are you feeling okay? Those are your keys, stupid, she said with a soft laugh. No, they're not. My voice dropped cold. Without saying a word, Amy disappeared into the hallway, then returned holding a framed picture. That's you, she said, handing it to me. In the photo, I was standing next to a shiny new Honda Civic at a dealership. Huge smile, handshake with the salesman. Wearing, of course, a striped sweater. That was 6 months ago, babe, when I surprised you with the car. Do you seriously not remember? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. That was me. My face, my grin, my stance. But it felt like I was looking at a stranger with my skin. I hurried into the bedroom, pulled open the closet, and froze. Dozens of sweaters. Striped, patterned, holiday-themed. My entire wardrobe looked like an ugly sweater convention. Amy followed me in, concern all over her face. Jamie, are you okay? You're starting to worry me. I'm fine, elite. Just didn't sleep well, I said even though I slept like a baby. I kissed her on the cheek and left for work. Outside, the Civic sat gleaming in the driveway. It looked familiar now. I got in, it smelled like me. Air fresheners, black tree scent, LED lights under the dash. Everything clean and organized. Exactly as I would have it. But it still felt wrong. Like I was stepping into someone else's life who just happened to be me. I arrived at the office late, feeling hazy. As I settled into my usual desk, a voice interrupted me. Jamie, you're my desk, said Andrew, my annoying coworker. I looked up. What? No, I've always sat here. Just because I've been gone for a while doesn't mean you can steal my desk, Mountain Drew. Mountain Drew? Seriously? He muttered, pushing up his glasses. We had a bit of a back and forth, and 10 minutes later, I was in HR. Do you know what your position is here? The woman behind the desk asked. Of course, I said. I'm in charge of the Orbis project. And what does that entail? She asked, typing something. I opened my mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I attend meetings, organize, wait. I blinked. What is the relevance of this question? I deflected. Well, she said, swiveling her monitor slightly. You're in the wrong department. Wrong floor, actually. And according to your file, you haven't been assigned to the Orbis project. That doesn't launch for another 2 months. You were moved to data processing last month after your last incident. My stomach dropped. What incident? She scrolled through my record with a practiced sigh. The one where you were caught dumping unmarked liquid into coworkers' lunches in the break room. Honestly, you're lucky you weren't fired. I sat frozen in the chair, every nerve in my body screaming. What the hell is happening to me? The words slipped out before I could stop myself. Excuse me. She asked, my face turned slightly red. I'm sorry. I'm just having a hard time readjusting after the work trip. Okay, Mr. Jamie, why don't you just go on ahead back to your proper work area? And try to stay out of trouble, please. The paperwork isn't easy on these old fingers, you know. Yes, of course, thank you, I said as I quickly and quietly whisked away back into the building. After asking around a bit, I finally made it to my actual desk. Everyone on that floor acted as if I belonged there. I got a quick rundown of my tasks and got right to it. Trying to not think about all the bizarre things that happened, I decided to put it out of mind and focus solely on work. About 30 minutes before I had to clock out, I decided to go through my emails. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I checked my drafts and saw my last draft dated on the day I went on to the work trip. Subject, Orbis, sweet red. It's not me. Take the call. It made no sense, but I didn't know what to make of it. So I just went back to work. Besides that first day back, everything else seemed to be running smoothly. I got through the week without any more hiccups. I didn't mention my apprehension to Amy because she is such a worrywart. That was until today. I had planned to visit my best friend's family for a weekend barbecue kind of an unofficial celebration for his niece's upcoming graduation. I got there relatively early. Honestly, I was looking forward to it. I needed something familiar. But if I thought that today would bring me peace, I was wrong. The grill was already going when I got there. The scent of charcoal and barbecue sauce hit me before I even stepped out of the car. Kids were running around the yard with water guns, and someone had queued up an early 2000s playlist on a Bluetooth speaker. It felt right. I needed this. Familiar faces. I spotted Marcus, my best friend since middle school, near the back porch, beer in hand, laughing with his cousin. He lit up when he saw me. "Jamie, look who finally decided to show up," he said, pulling me into a quick hug. "Hey man, sorry I'm early. Didn't want to miss the ribs this time." "Smart move," he chuckled. "You're not still vegetarian, are you?" That made me pause. "I was never vegetarian," I said, half laughing. He blinked, then shrugged. "All right, yeah." The moment passed, but something about it lingered. I grabbed a plate, made small talk, accepted a drink. For the first time all week, I felt like myself again, until I wandered inside to use the bathroom. On the hallway wall, right before the guest bathroom, was a photo collage I'd seen a dozen times before. I'd even helped Marcus's mom hang it last year. But this time, something was off. At the center of the collage, surrounded by prom photos and school portraits, was a framed picture of me and Marcus at the lake house. I remember that trip, or at least I thought I did. But in the photo, I was wearing a striped sweater again. The same red and blue one from the dealership photo. I stared at it for a long time. My arm was around Marcus's shoulder. We were grinning, beers in hand. But there was something wrong with my face, too wide a smile. Almost posed. Unnatural. Why would I even wear a sweater in the sweaty July weather at a lake anyway? "You okay?" a voice said behind me. I jumped. It was Marcus's mom, holding a bowl of potato salad. She smiled warmly. "Bathroom's just there, hon." I nodded. "Yeah, thanks. I don't remember this picture being here." She looked at it. "Oh, you two had so much fun that weekend. You don't remember? We printed that out the same night you all came back. You helped me pick the frame, Jamie." "Oh yeah, I must still be tired," I said quickly, slipping past her into the bathroom and locking the door behind me. I turned on the sink and stared at myself in the mirror. Same face, same eyes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was looking at someone else. I washed my face. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The area code was wrong. Too many digits. I answered without thinking. "Jamie." A panicked voice cut through the speaker, echoing in the small bathroom. "Who is this?" I snapped. "It's me, you. I'm you." "What? Is this some kind of joke?" "Marcus, if this is you, no. Please, just listen to me. Don't hang up. This is important. I need your help. I need to get back. Back to my home." "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked. "The Orbis project. It worked. We opened a gateway. A dimensional gate. But something went wrong. We didn't know it would swap us. I don't belong here, and you don't belong there." No, this isn't real. You're lying. I swear to you, we don't have much time. The longer we stay out of sync, the harder it'll be to return. We'll be lost, Jamie." My head was spinning. How was this even possible? What went wrong? I don't know exactly. There were variables we didn't account for. But I've been working on a fix. I think there's a way back. How do I know you're telling the truth? Have you noticed anything strange? People acting like you said or did things you don't remember. Preferences that don't feel like yours. I hesitated. "Yeah, I don't like chicken." "I do." I swallowed. "This is your world? You're the one who drives the Honda Civic." "Yeah, Amy bought it for me." "And the sweaters? What's with all the striped sweaters?" "Sweaters. Your closet's full of them, and you're wearing one in every photo, even at the lake trip last July." He paused, then said, "Who the hell wears a sweater in July?" Story 4. Just a year ago, I was at rock bottom, and not like I fell to the bottom. No, I had firmly settled there, clutching a bottle of whiskey with a divorce and job termination behind me. The divorce papers were stained with cigarette ash and wine glass rings. No friends from work remained. Everything I had amounted to nothing. I drank all day, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I didn't even eat. I didn't care. I drowned in debt and absolute depression. I often thought about ending it all. Pills, a razor blade, or a noose. I simply wondered which would be quicker and easier, but never followed through. The day the nightmare began, I was walking through the rain to the liquor store, and something terrible found me on the way. It was a simple flyer, soaked through and plastered to a lamppost like a moth to glass. Want to try your luck? That's all it said, along with a phone number. I smirked, but something inside urged me to call. As I dialed, I told myself it was just for a laugh, but looking back, I think I truly was reaching for any kind of help. The call was answered on the second ring. No voice. Nothing. Just static. I tried to speak, but no one responded. I hung up and laughed bitterly. After spending nearly my last dollars on booze, I stumbled home, tossed my coat to the floor, and lost myself in bourbon. In the morning, I drank to remember. In the evening, to forget. And then it happened. My bedroom door creaked open with a long, eerie moan that made my heart plummet. I never left it open. I turned, and from the bedroom stepped something, slowly, rhythmically clicking its heels. A man, maybe 30, dressed like a corpse from the 19th century. Tailcoat, vest with tarnished copper buttons, black leather gloves, and golden wristwatch. But none of it mattered, because his head was turned completely around, along with his face. His skin was taut and smooth, unnaturally stretched. His chin sat where his forehead should be. Bulging brown eyes stared from upside-down sockets like marbles, and his crooked smile revealed yellow teeth. Filthy hair clung to his neck. He tossed a silver coin in one hand, catching it with dirt-caked nails. I screamed, pressing myself against the wall. My entire body crawled with terror. I could barely breathe. "You called," he whispered. His mouth barely moved. He kept tossing the damn coin every second. "Who are you?" I choked, gasping in fear. "A player. We can play a game, one that will change your life. Generous rewards and brutal losses." I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I believed it was a drunken hallucination. Maybe I lost my mind, but I agreed. And oh, how wrong I was. It was real. But back then, I had nothing left to lose. That's when he laid out the rules. Heads, and you stay alive, with a chance to win in future games and earn rewards. Tails, and I take your life. Right here, right now. My lips moved before my mind caught up. I agreed. He flipped a coin, and time slowed. I saw it twirl, silver like the moon. Heads. We'll meet again, winner. He smiled faintly and disappeared into my bedroom. When I rushed to check, the room was empty. My knees buckled with fear and confusion. But it was only the beginning. The first few days were normal. I drank and smoked from morning till night. By the third day, I had no money left. The fourth morning, I stood at a crosswalk, eyes bloodshot, staring at the red light. That's when I heard it, like a knife to the back. Heads, and you'll cross safely. Tails, you'll die under car. My heart froze. I turned. There he was, smiling, flipping the coin between his fingers. I begged him not to, but his smile widened, revealing yellowed fangs. He flipped the coin. Heads. I crossed. In the grass on the other side, I found an envelope. Inside, $20,000. I burst into tears, then laughter. I couldn't describe the madness surging through me, hysteria, holding that envelope in shaking hands. I paid off my debts, cleaned my apartment for the first time in months, nearly stopped drinking. How I wished it had ended there. But now I know that first coin toss wasn't a game. It was a contract. A week later, I was brushing my teeth when I heard a snap behind me. Heads, your tooth cracks. Tails, no cavities to worry about. Coin flips. Heads. I saw it split in the mirror. The pain was blinding. I crawled, bleeding, to the dentist. And after that, he came more often. Wherever I went, elevator, car, street, he was there, tossing the coin. Each toss shaped my day. I slipped in public and broke my nose. Found wallets full of cash. Met stunning women who seemed programmed to fall into my bed. A streak of tiny wins. A parade of tiny losses. One morning, I didn't wake up naturally. I awoke to him standing over me. Heads, the stock market bows before you. Tails, you lose everything. Heads, I made a fortune. Bought my dream home, car, lived carefree. He appeared only to toss the coin. I kept winning. Maybe luck was with me, or maybe he wanted me to win. One coin toss later, I had a girlfriend, then a wife. Her laughter was like bells. Her eyes, oceanic. Heads, she'll give you beautiful children. Tails, she dies in her sleep. He said it one night, standing by our bed. I couldn't speak. Tails, she never woke up. The stakes grew. He became constant. When he wasn't physically there, he appeared in puddles, windows, mirrors, smiling, flipping his coin. I turned, nothing. My house emptied. I should have grieved, but I had just won another game and lost my love for her. Otherwise, I'd have spiraled into depression again. Money flowed in and out. Then I lost and got lung cancer. I heard him chuckle as I coughed blood. Another toss. Both legs shattered with a grotesque snap. One win healed me. The cancer vanished. Another loss would have given me dementia. Even winning stopped bringing joy. All I felt was fear. Fear of him coming back to toss the monstrous coin again. Losses began outweighing wins. I stopped shaving. What if a toss said I'd slit my throat? I stopped bathing, stopped doing anything. He didn't care. He came anyway. He stepped from my closet, silver coin blackened and stained. Heads, you go blind in one eye. Tails, in both. I screamed, begged him to stop, said I'd give up everything. He listened, then flipped. Heads. I went blind in my left eye. Before my surgery, lying on the table, I saw him on a chair beside me. He whispered, Heads. A surgical error takes your hearing. Tails. You die on the operating table. Terror froze me. I wept. That's not fair, I whispered. He flipped. Heads. I'm half blind, completely deaf. My heart pounds. Sweat pours constantly. I can't sleep. When I do, he's there. When I'm awake, he's still there. He no longer appears in reflections. He just sits beside me, silently mirroring my every move. A man with a backward head, draining my life with each second. No words can describe the horror of being near him. I try to shoot myself. Heads, the gun didn't fire. Try to hang myself. Heads, the rope snapped just in time. Then he vanished for a whole day, only to reappear at dawn, sitting on my windowsill, head tilted grotesquely upward, driving a finger into his chest. With his blood, he wrote on my wall, Tomorrow, 7 a.m., final game. Heads, you die quickly, painlessly. Tails, you'll scream as loud as you can, until you die. I begged, sobbed, screamed without hearing myself. With my one working eye, I saw him grinning, enjoying it, as he vanished again. I'm typing this now, watching the clock. It's 6:53 a.m. Story 5. This happened a few years back. I was doing long-haul, mostly cross-country routes, the kind that take you through vast stretches of nothing. You know, the ones where the radio turns to static for hours, and the only sign of life is the occasional pair of headlights going the other way, miles apart. I was young, eager for the miles, the money. Didn't mind the solitude. Or so I thought. The route I was on took me across a long, desolate stretch of highway that ran between the borders of two large governmental territories. I don't want to say exactly where, but think big, empty spaces, lots of trees, not much else. It was notorious among drivers for being a dead zone. No signal, no towns for 100 miles either side, and prone to weird weather. Most guys try to hit it during daylight, but schedules are schedules. Mine had me crossing it deep in the night. I remember the feeling. Utter blackness outside the sweep of my headlights. The kind of dark that feels like it's pressing in on the cab. The only sound were the drone of the diesel engine, the hiss of the air brakes now and then, and the rhythmic thrum of the tires on asphalt. Hypnotic. Too hypnotic. I've been driving for about 10 hours, with a short break a few states back. Coffee was wearing off. The dashboard lights were a dull green glow, comforting in a way, but also making the darkness outside seem even more absolute. My eyelids felt like they had lead weights attached. You fight it, you know? Slap your face, roll down the window for a blast of cold air, crank up whatever music you can find that hasn't dissolved into static. I was doing all of that. It must have been around 2 or 3 a.m. I was in that weird state where you're not quite asleep, but not fully awake either. Like your brain is running on low power mode. The white lines on the road were starting to blur together, stretching and warping. Standard fatigue stuff. I remember blinking hard, try to refocus. That's when I saw it, or thought I saw it. Just a flicker at the edge of my headlights on the right shoulder of the road. Small, low to the ground. For a split second, I registered a shape vaguely human-like, and then it was gone, swallowed by the darkness as I passed. My first thought? Deer. Or a coyote. Common enough. but it hadn't moved like an animal. It had been upright. My brain, sluggish as it was, tried to process it. Too small for an adult. Too still for an animal startled by a rig. Then the logical part, the part that was still trying to keep me safe on the road, chimed in. You're tired. Seeing things. Happens. And I almost accepted that. I really did. Shook my head, took a swig of lukewarm water from the bottle beside me. Kept my eyes glued to the road ahead. The image, though, it kind of stuck. A small, upright shape. Like a child. No way, I told myself. Out here, middle of nowhere, middle of the night, impossible. Kids don't just wander around on interterritorial highways at 3 a.m. It had to be a trick of the light, a bush, my eyes playing games. I've seen weirder things born of exhaustion. Shadows that dance, trees that look like figures. It's part of the job when you're pushing limits. I drove on for maybe another 30 seconds, the image fading, my rational mind starting to win. Just a figment. Then I glanced at my passenger side mirror. Habit. Always checking. And my blood went cold. Not just cold. It felt like it turned to slush. There, illuminated faintly by the red glow of my trailer lights receding into the distance, was the reflection of a small figure. Standing. On the shoulder of the road. Exactly where I'd thought I'd seen something. It wasn't a bush. It wasn't a shadow. It was small, and it was definitely standing there, unmoving, as my truck pulled further and further away. My heart started hammering against my ribs. This wasn't fatigue. This was real. There was something back there, and it looked tiny. Every instinct screamed at me. Danger. Wrong. Keep going. But another voice, the one that makes us human, I suppose, whispered something else. A kid? Alone out here? What if they're hurt? Lost? I fought with myself for a few seconds that stretched into an eternity. The image in the mirror was getting smaller, fainter. If I didn't act now, they'd be lost to the darkness again. God, the thought of leaving a child out there, if that's what it was, against my better judgment, against that primal urge to just floor it, I made a decision. I slowed the rig, the air brakes hissing like angry snakes. Pulled over to the shoulder, the truck groaning in protest. Put on my hazards, their rhythmic flashing cutting into the oppressive blackness. Then, I did what you're never supposed to do, with a full trailer on a narrow shoulder. I started to reverse. Slowly, carefully, my eyes flicking between the mirrors, trying to keep the trailer straight, trying to relocate that tiny figure. The crunch of gravel under the tires sounded unnaturally loud. It took a minute, maybe two, but it felt like an hour. The red glow of my tail lights eventually washed over the spot again. And there it was, a kid. I stopped the truck, so my cab was roughly alongside them, maybe 10 feet away. Switched on the high beams, hoping to get a better look, and also to make myself clearly visible as just a truck, not something else. The kid was small, really small. I guess maybe 6, 7 years old. Hard to tell in the glare. They were just standing there on the very edge of the gravel shoulder, right where the trees began. The woods pressed in close on this stretch of road, tall, dark pines and dense undergrowth that looked like a solid black wall just beyond the reach of my lights. The kid wasn't looking at me. They were facing sort of parallel to the road, just walking, slowly, like they were on a stroll, completely oblivious to the massive 18-wheeler that had just pulled up beside them, engine rumbling, lights blazing. They were wearing what looked like pajamas. Thin, light-colored pajamas. In the chill of the night. No coat, no shoes that I could see. My mind reeled. This was wrong. So many levels of wrong. I killed the engine. The sudden silence was almost deafening, amplifying the crickets, the rustle of leaves in the woods from a breeze I couldn't feel in the cab. My heart was still thumping, a weird mix of fear and adrenaline and a dawning sense of responsibility. I rolled down the window. The night air hit me, cold and damp, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth. Hey, I called out. My voice sounded hoarse, too loud in the quiet. Hey, kid. No response. They just kept walking, one small, bare foot in front of the other, at a pace that was taking them absolutely nowhere fast. Their head was down slightly. I couldn't see their face properly. Kid, are you okay? I tried again, louder this time. Slowly, so slowly the kid stopped. They didn't turn their head fully, just sort of angled at a fraction, enough that I could see a pale sliver of cheek in the spill of my headlights. Still not looking at me. Still ignoring the multi-ton machine idling beside them. A prickle of unease ran down my spine. Not the normal kind of unease. This was deeper, colder. Animals act weird sometimes, but kids? A lost kid should be scared, relieved, something. This one was nothing. "What are you doing out here all alone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, friendly. Like you're supposed to with a scared kid. Even though this one didn't seem scared at all. It's the middle of the night. Silence. Just the sound of their bare feet scuffing softly on the gravel as they took another step, then another. As if my presence was a minor inconvenience, a background noise they were choosing to ignore. This wasn't right. My internal alarm bells were clanging louder now. My hand hovered near the gear stick. Part of me wanted to slam it into drive and get the hell out of there. But the image of this tiny child, alone, possibly in shock. I couldn't just leave. Could I? "Where are your parents?" I pushed, my voice a bit sharper than I intended. "Are you lost?" Finally, the kids stopped walking completely. They turned their head, just a little more, still not looking directly at my cab, more toward the front of my truck, into the glare of the headlights. I could see their face a bit better now. Pale, featureless in the harsh light, like a porcelain doll. Small, dark smudges that might have been eyes. No expression. None. Not fear. Not sadness. Not relief. Just blank. An unreadable slate. Then a voice. Small. Thin. Like the rustle of dry leaves. "Lost." Just that one word. It hung in the air between us. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by a fresh wave of concern. "Okay, lost. That's something I can deal with." "Okay, kid. Lost is okay. We can fix lost. Where do you live? Where are you going?" The kid finally, slowly, turned their head fully towards my cab. Towards me. I still couldn't make out much detail in their face. The angle, the light, something was obscuring it, keeping it in a sort of shadowy vagueness despite the headlights. But I could feel their gaze. It wasn't like a normal kid's look. There was a weight to it, an intensity that was deeply unsettling for such a small form. "Home," the kid said, that same thin, reedy voice. "Trying to get home." "Right home. Where's home?" I asked, leaning forward a bit, trying to project reassurance. "Is it near here? Did you wander off from a campsite?" "A car." There were no campsites for miles. No broken-down cars on the shoulder. I knew that. The kid didn't answer that question directly. Instead, they took a small step towards a truck. Then another. My hand tensed on the door handle, ready to open it, to offer. What? A ride? Shelter? I didn't know. "It's cold out here," I said, stating the obvious. "You should get in. We can get you warm, and I can call for help when we get to a spot with a signal." My CB was useless, just static. My phone had shown no service for the last hour. The kid stopped about 5 feet from my passenger door, still in that pale, thin pajama-like outfit, barefoot on the sharp gravel. They should be shivering, crying. They were doing neither. "Can you help me?" the kid asked. The voice was still small, but there was a different inflection to it now. Less flat. A hint of something else. Pleading, maybe? "Yeah, of course I can help you," I said. "That's why I stopped." "Where are your parents? How did you get here?" The kid tilted their head. A jerky, unnatural little movement. "They're waiting. At home." "Okay. And where's home?" "Which direction?" I gestured vaguely up and down the empty highway. The kid didn't point down the road. They made a small, subtle gesture with their head, a little nod towards the trees, towards the impenetrable darkness of the woods lining the highway. "In there," the kid said. My stomach clenched. "In the woods?" "Your home is in the woods." "Lost," the kid repeated, as if that explained everything. "Trying to find a path. It's dark." "Yeah, it's very dark," I agreed, my eyes scanning the tree-line. It looked like a solid wall of black. No sign of any path, any habitation. Just dense, old-growth forest. The kind of place you could get lost in for days, even in daylight. "Can you come out?" the kid asked. "Help me look?" "It's not far. I can't see it from here." Every rational thought in my head screamed no. Get out of the truck? In the middle of nowhere, in the pitch dark, with this strange child who wanted me to go into those woods. No, absolutely not. But the kid looked so small, so vulnerable. If there was even a tiny chance they were telling the truth, that their house was just a little way in and they were genuinely lost. I don't think that's a good idea, buddy, I said, trying to sound gentle. It's dangerous in there at night. For both of us. Best thing is for you to hop in here with me. We'll drive until we get a signal, and then we'll call the police or the rangers. They can help find your home properly. The kid just stood there, that blank, unreadable face fixed on me. But it's right there, they insisted, their voice a little more insistent now. Just a little way. I can almost see it. If you just step out, the light from your door would help. My skin was crawling. There was something profoundly wrong with this scenario. The way they were trying to coax me out. The lack of normal emotional response. The pajamas. The bare feet. The woods. I looked closer at the kid, trying to pierce that strange vagueness around their features. My headlights were bright, but it was like they absorbed the light rather than reflected it. Their eyes. I still couldn't really see their eyes. Just dark hollows. I really think you should get in the truck, I said, my voice firmer now. It's warmer in here. We can figure out together. The kid took another step closer. They were almost at my running board now. Please, they said. That reedy voice again. My leg hurts. I can't walk much further. If you could just help me a little. Just to the path. My internal conflict was raging. My trucker instincts, honed by years of seeing weird stuff and hearing weirder stories at truck stops, were blaring warnings. But the human part, the part that saw a child in distress, was still there, still arguing. I was tired. So damn tired. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. Maybe this was all some bizarre misunderstanding. I squinted, trying to see past the kid, towards the tree lean they'd indicated. Was there a faint trail I was missing? A flicker of light deep in the woods? No, nothing. Just blackness. Solid, unyielding blackness. And then I saw it. It wasn't something I saw clearly at first. It was more like an anomaly, a disturbance in the darkness behind the kid. The kid was standing with their back mostly to the woods, facing my truck. Behind them, the darkness of the forest was absolute. Or it should have been. But there was something connected to them. Something that stretched from the small of their back, from under the thin pajama top, and disappeared into the deeper shadows of the trees. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a weird shadow cast by my headlights hitting them at an odd angle. Maybe a rope they were dragging? A piece of clothing snagged on a branch? I leaned forward, trying to get a clearer view. The kid was still talking, their voice a low, persistent murmur. It's not far. Please, just help me. I'm so cold, but I wasn't really listening to the words anymore. I was focused on that thing behind them. It wasn't a rope. It wasn't a shadow. It was a tube. A long, dark, thick tube. It seemed to emerge directly from the kid's lower back. Impossibly, seamlessly. It was dark matte, like a strip of the night itself given form. And it snaked away from the child, maybe 10, 15 feet, before disappearing into the inky blackness between two thick pine trunks. It wasn't rigid. It seemed to have a slight, almost imperceptible flexibility, like a massive, sluggish umbilical cord made of shadow. It didn't reflect any light from my headlamps. It just absorbed it. My breath hitched in my throat. My blood, which had been cold before, now felt like it had frozen solid. This wasn't just wrong. This was impossible. Unnatural. The kid was still trying to coax me. Are you going to help me? It's just there. You're so close. My voice, when I finally found it, was barely a whisper. I couldn't take my eyes off that appendage. Kid, what is that? Behind you. The kid flinched. Not a big movement, just a tiny, almost imperceptible tightening of their small frame. Their head, which had been tilted pleadingly, straightened. The blankness on their face seemed to solidify. What's what? They asked, their voice suddenly devoid of that pleading tone. It was flat again. Colder. That thing, I stammered, pointing with a shaking finger. Coming out your back. Going into the woods. What is that? The kid didn't turn a look. They didn't need to. Their gaze, those dark, unseen eyes, bored into me. It's nothing, they said. The voice was still small, but it had a new edge to it. A hardness. You're seeing things. You're tired. They were using my own earlier rationalization against me. No, I said, my voice gaining a tremor of conviction born of sheer terror. No, I'm not. I see it. It's right there. It's connected to you." The kid was silent for a long moment. The only sound was the thumping of my own heart, so loud I was sure they could hear it. The crickets had stopped. The wind seemed to die down. An unnatural stillness fell over the scene. Then, the kid's face began to change. It wasn't a dramatic, movie monster transformation. It was far more subtle and far more terrifying. The blankness didn't leave, but it sharpened. The pale skin seemed to tighten over the bones. The areas where the eyes were, those dark smudges, seemed to deepen, to become more shadowed, more intense. And a flicker of something ancient and utterly alien passed across their features. It wasn't human anger. It was something older, colder, and infinitely more patient, now strained to its limit. The air in my cab suddenly felt thick, heavy, hard to breathe. "Just come out of the truck," the kid said, and the voice, oh God, the voice. It wasn't the small, reedy voice of a child anymore. It was deeper, resonant, with a strange, grating undertone, like stones grinding together. It was coming from that small frame, but it was impossibly large, impossibly old. It vibrated in my chest. "Come out. Now." The command was absolute. My hand, which had been hovering near the gear stick, now gripped it like a lifeline. My other hand fumbled for the ignition key, which I'd stupidly left in. "What are you?" I choked out, staring at the monstrous thing playing dress-up in a child's form, at the dark, pulsating tube that was its anchor to the shadows. The kid's head tilted again, that jerky, unnatural movement. The expression on its face, if you could call it that, was one of pure, unadulterated annoyance. Contempt, like I was a particularly stupid insect it had failed to swat. And then it spoke in that same terrible, resonant, grinding voice. The words it said are burned into my memory, colder than any winter night. "Why?" it rasped, the sound seeming to scrape the inside of my skull. "The Fuck, are humans smarter now?" That was it. That one sentence. The sheer, cosmic frustration in it. The implication of past encounters, of easier prey. The utter, alien nature of it. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I reacted. Primal fear, the kind that bypasses all higher brain function, took over. My hand twisted the key. The diesel engine roared back to life, a sudden, violent explosion of sound in the horrifying stillness. The kid, the thing, actually recoiled. A small, jerky step back. The expression, that awful, tightened, ancient look, intensified. I slammed the gear stick into drive. My foot stomped on the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, tires spinning on the gravel for a terrifying second before they bit into the asphalt. I didn't look at it. I couldn't. I stared straight ahead, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, the whole cab vibrating around me. The truck surged forward, gaining speed with agonizing slowness. For a horrible moment, I imagined that tube thing whipping out, trying to snag the trailer, to pull me back, to drag me into those woods. I imagined that small figure, with its ancient, terrible voice, somehow keeping pace. I risked a glance in my driver's side mirror. It was standing there, on the shoulder, unmoving. The headlights of my departing truck cast its small silhouette into sharp relief. And behind it, the dark tube was still visible, a thick, obscene cord snaking back into the endless night of the forest. It didn't seem to be retracting or moving. It just was. The thing didn't pursue. It just stood and watched me go. And that, somehow, was almost worse. The sheer confidence, the patience, like it knew there would be others. Or maybe it was just annoyed that this particular attempt had failed. I drove. I don't know for how long. I just drove. My foot was welded to the floor. The engine screamed. I watched the speedometer needle climb, far past any legal or safe limit for a rig that size, on a road that dark. I didn't care. The image of that thing, that child shape with its dark umbilical to the woods, and that voice, that awful, grinding voice asking its horrifying question, was burned onto the inside of my eyelids. I must have driven for an hour, maybe more, at speeds that should have gotten me killed or arrested, before the adrenaline started to fade, replaced by a bone-deep, shaking exhaustion that was more profound than any fatigue I'd ever known. My hands were trembling so violently I could barely keep the wheel straight. Tears were streaming down my face, not from sadness, but from sheer unadulterated terror and relief. When the first hint of dawn started to gray the eastern sky, and my phone finally beeped, indicating a single bar of service, I pulled over at the first wide spot I could find. I practically fell out of the cab, vomiting onto the gravel until there was nothing left but dry heaves. I sat there on the cold ground, shaking for a long time, watching the sun come up, trying to convince myself that it had been a dream, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But I knew it wasn't. The detail of that tube, the voice, the question. You don't hallucinate something that's specific, that coherent, that utterly alien. I never reported it. Who would I report it to? What would I say? Officer, I saw a little kid who was actually an ancient cosmic horror tethered to the woods by a nightmare umbilical cord, and it got mad because I didn't want to be its dinner. They'd have locked me up, breathalyzed me, drug tested me, sent me for a psych eval. I finished that run on autopilot, dropped the load, drove my rig back to yard, and I quit. I told them I was burnt out, needed a break. They tried to convince me to stay, offer me different routes, more pay. I just couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that kid, that tube, those woods. Every dark road felt like a trap. I found a local job, something that keeps me home at night. I don't drive in remote areas anymore if I can help it, especially not at night. I still have nightmares. Sometimes when I'm very tired, driving home late from somewhere, I'll see a flicker at the edge of my vision on the side of the road, and my heart will try to beat its way out of my chest. I don't know what that thing was. An alien? A demon? Something else. Something that doesn't fit into our neat little categories? All I know is that it's out there. And it's patient. And it seems to have learned that its old tricks aren't as effective as they used to be. Why the fuck are humans smarter now? That question haunts me. It implies they weren't always. It implies that once upon a time, we were easier. That maybe, just maybe, people like me, tired and alone on dark roads, used to just step out of the cab when asked, and were never seen again. So, if you're ever driving one of those long, lonely stretches of road, deep in the night, and you see something you can't explain, maybe just keep driving. Maybe being smarter now means knowing when not to stop. Knowing when to ignore that little voice telling you to help, because what's asking for help might not be what it seems. Stay safe out there. And for God's sake, stay on the well-lit roads. That's it for today's creepy Reddit tales. Before we go, I just want to say a quick thanks to all of you for watching, liking, and sticking around. You guys keep this channel going, and I'll be back soon with more stories that'll make your skin crawl. Drop a comment if you've got your own spooky tale to share, and I'll see you in the next one.